Okay, so Gary, it is all yours. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone had a great August. So this is another one in the series we're doing. This is going to be on damp basements. There's quite a lot of information in here, but if you get any questions, if you can maybe just type them up, send them to Matthew, and I can answer anything at the end. And if you've got personal stuff as well, you can always call me after the fact, and I can go through any of the questions for you. I've got a couple of hours free at the end of this seminar. Again, you'll see the Q code every so often. If you do want to scan that, you can get all my full information into your smartphones. For those of you that may be attending for the first time, we do have a full team. My wife, Christine's the office manager. She does all the bookings. Ian, Mladen, and myself are all full-time home inspectors. Again, if you drive there, we'll drive there. Typically within an hour and 20 from Mississauga, we'll go. And we do 7 days a week. So this seminar today, and again, you'll see this QR code pop up every so often. Just put your camera to it and it'll put all my details in. So damp basements, it's coming at a good time, I think, especially with all that rain we had last night. That was tremendous. And in fact, I'd had a minor leak in my basement that I fixed a little while ago myself. And I went down this morning thinking it had leaked, but lucky for me, it was still okay. So we're going to go through and show you how basements are damp proof today. And you'll notice I talk about damp proofing. We don't talk about waterproofing. We're not a submarine. We're not going to waterproof it. It's not possible. We damp proof it as good as we can. So we'll talk about what a basement space is. It's basically below grade. Okay. Historically, basements we dug down enough basically to hold our components. It wasn't designed for us to live down there and make part of our livable space. Basically, if you ever talk to people in Florida or stuff like that, they'd say, oh, it must be great having a basement. Well, guess what? It's cheaper to put a third floor up than it is to dig a floor down. So if you're talking to your friends in Florida, tell them to go another floor up and make sure it's hurricane proof, right? So this is what we're talking about, what a basement is. Poured concrete, block, brick. I'm going to show you all different types of foundations. But your foundation basically starts right below. This is a brick veneer house. If you took my previous courses, you'd know that. But this is a brick veneer house. So the foundation is basically starting right from here, okay? And we have to go down below our frost line. Now, a frost line for Southern Ontario is 3 feet 11 inches. Call it 4 feet. Okay, so 4 feet is our frost line in Southern Ontario. We have a building code book, and that building code book tells you for every area in Canada what the frost line is, because the further we go north, the deeper the frost line is. So it's 3 feet 11 inches here. In Barrie, it may be 4 feet 3 inches. It changes as you go. So when we deal with older basements, because it was just only the components, they would go 4 or 5 feet down, just enough for the frost line, put the components in. They're not going to spend the extra money and dig all the way down, okay? But as real estate got more expensive and people start wanting to do more with their basements, they started digging down further. And now our basements are as nice as our main floors in most cases, okay? But this is what your poured concrete or a basement foundation is. It goes down, and then at the bottom here we have what's called a footing. And then here's your slab, okay? And this is inside your basement area. So this is your frost line, okay? So from where that dirt goes down. So we're going to look at a few different foundations for you. Stone foundations, brick foundations, concrete, block. We're going to go through them all and tell you the slight differences and what we can do to damp proof them, okay? And there's all the ages. And for those of you that had taken the aging a home, we used a lot of this on how to age homes as well, knowing what kind of block foundation they had. So here's a typical stone and rubble foundation. So again, if you looked at the previous ages, stone and rubble, right through to the, mid 1920s at the latest. And then we changed to brick. We also did concrete. And I've got some nice pictures here for you. But anytime we see something with stone and rubble, typically it's not dug all the way down. This is where you're typically looking at something that may only be 5 feet, 4.5 feet down. Okay. And they will always weep. You will always get some moisture transfer coming through a stone and block. Okay. Stone and rubble. One good thing about it is at the upper level, when it does start to freeze, any of the moisture that inside when it does freeze almost does give you a nice bit of a moisture barrier. But in the lower portion, that's where we will get some weeping of moisture coming through. Once we went to brick, we don't see as many brick. The brick was a very small era, but you will see some obviously in the older areas. And again, our older areas are either in the old downtown areas of any small town or closer to the lake in southern Ontario. So let's look at a footing here. So this is how the footing goes. So if you remember the earlier picture we had where we had the T going down, this is where your footing sits on. So they've broken away the slab here, okay? So you can clearly see where the footing is, okay? We can also see some efflorescence coming through this block foundation. Again, block foundation, like stone and rubble, you can get moisture transfer just naturally. It's called efflorescence. So this is the salt deposits left from where the blocks may have been filling up with water, not necessarily leaking, but we know they've been having water infiltration. Okay. Now, the reason they've broken this out, they're going to be putting a new internal weeping tile system inside, but I'll talk about that as we get a little bit later. Right now, I'm trying to give you an understanding of how a foundation works and what a foundation is and why it's different. So on here, for those that are really experienced, this is actually right here, is this footing here, okay? But because we can see the footing, which we don't normally see, because on the footing would sit the slab, okay? But we can see the footing here. So if I was to inspect something like this, or you were to walk around with your clients, we know that they've lowered this basement. So you used to be standing a few inches above here. So they've lowered the basement about a foot to give more headroom to finish the basement. Now, obviously, when they do that, they have to do some underpinning or some step footings. Okay, I'm not getting into that today, but you see something like this. This is the original footing, and they've lowered the basement. Nothing wrong with doing that. A lot of the older homes do. So anytime we do an inspection, we always start with the exterior. Obviously, we'll do the roof, we'll do the exterior. You always hear us talking about grading. Grading is key. If you want a dry basement, we have to control water, and we have to control that water away as much as possible. If we can control that water away from the foundation, we're well on the way of having a basement with less water and moisture leakage issues. So, in Toronto, we're not allowed to go with our drains directly down to our weeping tiles. Okay, we have to cut them off, and we have to vent the water away from the foundation. And I've got some pictures here because some of you may be saying, what's a weeping tile? How does it work? Well, at the end of this, you're going to understand exactly how this works. So we look at a house like this. Is the grading okay? We typically want grading about, for the first 6 feet, we want it 1 inch for every foot. So in theory, if you're standing 6 feet away from your house, it should be 6 inches difference from the side, okay? That's the type of grading we're looking for. So if we can control the water away from the foundation, okay, we're putting less pressure and less hydrant pressure, especially in the springtime when everything's pressing in against the foundation. We're trying to keep this away and not saturate those walls, okay? So this is when we start getting into the drainage around the footings, okay? And this is something we can inspect. The only way you can inspect that is if you're in a real old home with a lot of mature trees. If you want to see if the weeping tile system is still operating, you can do a scope. And there are companies out there that will do scopes and see what condition the weeping tiles are in around the perimeter. So what is a weeping tile? Okay, I've got some good cross sections coming up, but what we've got here, we've got your foundation wall. Okay, here's your footing, and right next to the footing, we've got a weeping tile. Now, that weeping tile can fail. It can get crushed. It could have big tree roots growing into it and damaging it, and therefore it fails. And if it fails, we don't have a secondary course to take the water away from our basement. Okay. So I'll show you a couple of pictures here. So the older, now anything new built in the early 1900s wouldn't have even had a weeping tile system. Anything 1910 later would have had likely a clay weeping tile system. So imagine these clay pipes. Obviously, this is stood up on its end, okay? But when they lay down, we'd lay them down in pieces and we'd just push them together, right? And they don't connect together. They just touch each other. But what happens is, as the water rises up, and this is what a lot of people don't understand, a weeping tile system is designed to take the water away from the footings, but not from the water coming down. Okay, it's nothing to do with the rainwater coming down. It's when the ground gets saturated and the water line starts moving up. Well, as it starts moving up, it hits the weeping tile system. The water would go between the pipes, and these weeping tiles would be sloped all the way around the perimeter of the house and go to the storm drains. Okay, so that's how they would lay down, flat on one side, and they just butt them together. And that's the original weeping tile system, used right up to the mid-60s. Okay, like I say, likely have failed. Some may still be working. But again, our first line of defense is first grading away from the home. Your weeping tiles is going to be your secondary. So what do we use today? The modern ones we use today, okay? They're really, really slick, okay? So they're plastic. Some of the old ones used to have holes just on the bottom. Again, we didn't need them on the top because the water rises up through the holes, goes around the perimeter, goes to the storm drains, okay? The newer ones today have holes all around them, okay? So just these little holes. But then what started happening is they would start getting clogged. And if they get clogged, the water would go up and up and up. And of course, it can't do anything, okay? And then they're going to fail. So we started putting socks over them, socks to stop the silt and the dirt and all that plugging up the weeping tiles. And that's what it looks like. So if anybody's ever bought a brand new home and you've been to visit it as they've done the excavations and you go in and visiting it week after week just to check on the progress, you're likely seen this laid down around the perimeter, also on a bed of screenings to help the drainage. And these work extremely, extremely well. So keeping the house feet dry, that's exactly what we're trying to do, okay? We want to know that when that water or the groundwater starts raising up and up and up, it's not going to raise up to the point it's going to go into our basement, okay? So this is where your weeping tile is, just like I showed you on one of the previous pictures. Now, if you remember, on one of the earlier pictures we had it where they'd cracked out all this flooring here, right? I don't know if you guys remember, it was quite a few shots back, okay? And I'd said that they've cracked out the floor here because they're likely putting an internal weeping tile system in. Well, here's the deal. If I've got to replace this because it's failed, I'd have to excavate around the entire perimeter of the house, all four sides, excavate all the way down to lay in a new weeping tile, okay? Now, we don't normally do this with poured concrete because a lot of the poured concretes, they are better than the block for keeping the water and the moisture out. But a lot of the older homes, so we're talking stone and rubble, we're talking brick foundations, we're calling block foundations, okay? they likely haven't been damp proofed, or if they have been damp proofed, it's likely failed today. So any damp proofing that I'm going to show you later that we do actually on the perimeter of the wall, of the foundation wall. Okay, I'm going to show you some pictures later. But anything older likely hasn't been damp proofed or it's failed. And if your weeping tiles have failed, what people do now, especially in the older homes, because it may be too expensive to excavate, you may not want to rip up your poured concrete walkways, you may be too close to your neighbor next door, especially in downtown Toronto, right? So they crack up the floor here around the entire perimeter on the interior of the floor, and then they drop in the weeping tile on the internal side. Okay, so now we've got this on the inside. And then you're going to say, well, Gary, how are we going to get that out to the storm drains? Well, we don't. What we do, we drop in a sump pump and the water collects, drops into a sump pump, and then we just spit it back out the side. Okay, that's an internal weeping tile system. And that's done on a lot of the older homes. And it is actually cheaper than doing an exterior. Okay, it's a little messy, but it is cheaper than doing it on an exterior because the excavation is far less, and then we're just re-cementing the floor up. Okay, so I'll spend a little bit more time on this picture, but I think it's important to let you know because it's not actually in this presentation. So again, obviously this is an older house. They've decided to do dig it all up, do an exterior. They could have done an interior depending on how the house was designed, but they've done an exterior here. So they've dug down, they've put the Delta MS wrap on. This stuff here, I've got to tell you guys, this is almost exclusively used now on all new builds. The house I'm in, I bought in 1991, so I've been here quite a while. I've had 7 cracks fixed over the time. I'm in a very clayey area, so clay is probably the worst soil to have for basement leakages, mainly because it's all about the pressures going on to the foundation. And the thing is with clay, when it gets wet, it expands, so it puts an extra pressure on the foundation. And when clay dries, it shrinks and takes off. So you've constantly got this going back and forth. So if you're in a clay area like me, you've likely already had multiple cracks in your foundation. And it's just a thing. It is what it is. But this product here, Delta MS Wrap, is probably the best product that ever came out. And as close as you can get, if you're going to have a dry basement, if you've got this on and you've got your weepers and you've got decent grading, very good. You're going to be very, very low odds. You're going to have issues with moisture coming into the basement. This stuff's fantastic. I think I've got a better shot of this, and I'll explain how it works. Maybe not. So this is like an egg crate, and I'm sure you've all seen it. So what happens is once we backfill this, if we get those hydrant pressures and the pressure of the water pushing against the foundation, and even though this is just like a solid plastic and it cracks, because it's like an egg crate, there's air pockets all along here. So as soon as the water pushes its way through, it's lost the pressure and then it just drips all the way down. And this goes all the way down right to the bottom of the weeper. This product is really, really is the cat's whiskers. It really reinvented how well you can damp proof a basement. And like I say, this is pretty much exclusively used today on all new builds. Fabulous, fabulous product. So again, if it gets through, that's what happens. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on bituminous coating. This is what we used to use, the tar. This is what I had done on my house numerous times back in the 90s, and it was good for a couple of years. And I'd have to pay for them to come out again. It was terrible stuff, but it wears off, as you can see here. So this is had a tar product put on it. It's all worn off. They've had some issues, so they've dug down and they're going to redo it. If they were going to redo this today, they're going to do it with the Delta MS wrap. Okay, but it wears off over time. Other areas we can do too. There's a few other products out there, but again, I'm going to explain them to you, but it's really not the way I would advise you to go now. But some of the other products, this is your Delta MS. I thought I had a better picture of this one. This is where all the dimples are. It looks like just like an egg crate. Now, I've seen these installed backwards on a brand new build. I had to call it out. They had to re-excavate the entire place. It's put on backwards. put the dimples to the wrong side. So stuff can happen. It was an expensive mistake on the builder's side, but hey, that's why you get a Tarion warranty. And that's how it looks, nice and clean. Okay, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Okay, so that's the same picture. The reason I brought this picture up here again, and I think I've got an explanation, so I may be getting ahead of myself here, but we don't always go for the expensive fix, and I'll explain that to you later, and we'll probably come back to this picture because obviously they've done this because they've had moisture issues. They're not, if they didn't have moisture issues, they're not doing it, right? So cause and effect. They had moisture issues. Now they've got to do something about it. Peel and stick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We don't really use a lot of this product now, but in the day, it was probably what got replaced by the Delta MS wrap. And basically, it's just a blue skin. They call this one was a blue skin, so you can see the thickness of it. And we wrapped the house with this. And the good thing is it did have a bit of flex with it. So if a crack did happen, it had some movement. But also at the same time, it could also get ripped and gouged when you're doing the backfill after you put this around the perimeter on the exterior. So far, you know, basement, they weren't intended to live down there. Okay, that changed because, you know, they had the extra space, and it is what it is. And as I said today, I would say in most cases, the inspections we do now, in most cases, the basements are done as nice, if not better than the main floors. So the plastic weeping tiles, they don't clog as much now. We have the socks over them. Okay. So foundations, new and old. Again, you know, if you've got a block foundation, brick foundation, and you're having issues, you could get a scope done. And likelihoods is if you're going to do the repair, depending what damage you have to do in your basement. I mean, if your basement's all finished, beautiful and nice and done, you may have to do an exterior excavation, but the interior works very well. It is cheaper, and but you are going to have to drop a sump pump in, which isn't a make or break. Majority of new homes today are all doing sump pumps. So there's no issues, but it is a cheaper way to do it. Bad surface water drainage, okay? Landscaping is probably one of the most expensive trades out there. I mean, if you've got to bring an electrician in or a plumber or a landscaper, trust me, the landscaper will, you know, it is so expensive. Yeah, it is something to a certain extent you can do yourself. So if you don't mind a bit of a, you know, giving up a few weekends with a couple of mates, it is something you can do yourself, but it's labor intensive and it's hard work. But to pay for landscaping, very expensive. So you may not always want to go for the expensive fix. Okay. So as houses get older, they settle. Obviously, this is not how the builder left the house. You know, this house looks like it's probably like a 1970s, 1980s build. But I mean, they didn't leave the grading like this. But no matter how much tampering down the builder is going to do, nothing's going to do it just over time and gravity. And it's always going to sink towards the house. So at least for the first 18 years, you have to raise it back up and get that grading back in so we can control it. Because if you can control that grading, you may not have to go into these more expensive fixes down the road. That is your first line of defense. So it may sound minor, you need to regrade, but really you do need to regrade if you don't want those expensive fix, or you don't want that water damage you're going to have. Okay. So again, this is one of those pictures I showed before. We know this has been lowered. Okay, there's the original footing, so we know that this basement's been lowered. Nothing wrong with that. But as we zoom in closer, we can see here, okay, that we've got moisture issues. Okay. Now here's the key. When we do an inspection, sometimes people say, Gary, can you do a partial inspection? Well, no, it'd be like going to my doctor and say, I don't feel well. Okay, what do you want me to look at? Your elbow, your knee? He needs to ask all the questions, and he needs to give you an overall examination to find out what's wrong with it. Well, it's the same thing with a house. If we didn't walk around the exterior of the house and have a look at the roof and have a look at where the drainage is going and everything else, and we just ran in the house and started inspecting the house, I'm going to look at this and maybe not have any idea why the issue's there. Okay. But if I'd done the outside of the house and I realized the grading was bad, or let's say this wasn't disconnected and it was connected to here, right? And I know that this is the area directly under there where the issues are. Well, it goes without saying to me, if we just cap this and extend this out, that may fix the issue, right? Plain and simple. So now we're into a $5, $10 fix to fix this moisture issue here, because I know where it's related to based on what I've done on the inspection. So the amount of things we know as inspectors that we don't actually tell your clients, otherwise no one would ever buy a house, right? We build this picture together ourselves so that we know, and then we can say, hey, you know what, Joe, this is right where you've got a downspout. Okay, your weeping tiles have probably failed. Okay, why don't you try capping that off, sending the water away, and see if that fixes the issue. Go for the $10 fix. You don't need to get into thousands yet. Okay, so everything we inspect, we're building that picture together, and we'd be there all day if we told your clients what we were looking for and what we were working out. Okay, again, hey, it may not look great, okay, but it works. Get it away. Okay, so yes, it's a long extension, but we want to get that water away from the foundation. So concrete foundations, yes, they have cracks. Control where water may be ponding or pooling. Poured concrete foundations, there's not, if I did an inspection on a house that does not have the insulation wrap going to the floor, so if I'm only seeing the insulation going below the frost line, there will not be a house ever that I have inspected in 17, 18 years that I have not seen a shrinkage crack. You'll always see them. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to leak. However, they could leak one day. Absolutely. In my view, if I saw 3 or 4 of these cracks and I know they haven't been repaired from the outside and my basement was unfinished, if I lived in my basement, in my house for 5 years, and then on the 6th year said, hey, you know what, Christine, we're going to finish the basement this year. Even though I know those 3, 4, 5 cracks have never leaked, I would still spend the money and do the injection before I spent $30,000, $40,000 fixing my basement. Okay, because one day they could leak. Okay, we can only tell your clients what's happening today. We can't tell you what's happening tomorrow. Nice and easy fix though. There's all different types of epoxy injections that they do. They drill on an angle all the way up. They do the injection. The injection's flexible enough that if the crack's still opening or closing a little bit, it'll go with it. A lot of these kit companies now do lifetime guarantees on them. The cost is anywhere from, you can find guys who are doing it for $350, guys are doing it for $500. But I mean, we usually tell people $400, $500 is pretty much a rule of thumb, is what it costs. It's a lot easy to do a spot fix on poured foundations. You cannot do spot fixes on block foundations, okay, or brick foundations, because we don't know where the leak's coming from. Okay. Now, yes, we could do an extension where we know the water's going down to the footings and we want to disconnect, cap off the drain and kick the water out. That's okay. That's kind of like a spot fix, but an individual spot fix on a block, you can't do it because we don't know where it's coming from. Okay. Where you can on a poured concrete. So again, I've already covered on this actually. This is talking about the general expensive and inexpensive fixes, okay? Grading, do it yourself or you have to pay someone to come in. That's fix number 1, okay? Replacing weeping tiles, very expensive internally and external, okay? But again, the new damp proofing products they use, absolutely fabulous. Okay, absolutely fabulous. Again, coming to this. So the reason I've got this picture in here again is maybe, just maybe the issue this guy was having in here was here. Maybe this is where his water was leaking. Well, if that was the case, what did we just explain? Go for a $10, $15 fix, extend this away. Maybe you didn't have to do this. Maybe you did. But better to do things in what you can see first. Grading, keeping the water away from the footings. Don't always think you've got to jump into the big expense. I told you I fixed one, it was about 3 weeks ago. I've had a minor leak under my stairs for a while, but it's not easy to get to. So I finally chiseled away it myself, as far as up as I could get, which was about 3.5 feet. I chiseled it out, put some hydraulic cement in there, let that set. And then, believe it or not, I got that leak spray and just sprayed it all the way. And the reason I did that is I couldn't have done the epoxy inside because I couldn't get high enough. And I didn't really want someone digging to the exterior. And touch wood, it's done the job. But again, if I had to go to the more expensive route, I will have to. But I mean, I went to a cheaper route first. So you don't always have to jump into, let's excavate. Okay. So just if you're in doubt, you call us, we'll come around, we'll have a look if it's your own home, and we'll try and give you some advice. Okay. So again, don't spend thousands when you can spend $5, $6, $10. Okay. Again, just rehashing what I've already explained. Align your client's expectations with the reality of the home. People just think that, my basement's never going to leak. Absolutely, it can one day. It doesn't matter how good we are. Okay. I mean, the best time for us to inspect is we love inspecting in the spring. It's great. We also love inspecting when the basements either have carpet on the floor, which you shouldn't really do because it stains easily. And especially when furniture sits on wet carpet, you'll see stains on the furniture. We also like it when laminates in the basement, because laminates are very unforgiving when it gets wet. So then we'll see the buckling. So these are all things that are easier for us to know if there's current or there's been previous, moisture issues. But again, it's an entire picture for us. Okay, we tie the entire house inspection in with what we see, so we know if we need to spend a little bit more time in the northeast corner because we know there's an issue, with the grading, or we know there's an issue with the downspout. Okay. Client finish your basement, chance of low moisture. Again, just been through it. It's expectations. Yes, we're good. We do a very detailed job, but people have to understand, and we will show them. We will show them when we see them cracks. May not need to be fixed today, but you just have to be aware. Okay, and also with some of the epoxy injections, it doesn't always bleed out to the other side. So we may identify some foundation shrinkage cracks on the exterior, but obviously it may have been fixed on the interior. We just won't see it on the exterior. So we'd still have to put a note in there that we saw some shrinkage cracks. But unless a foundation is parged all the way around, we will always see shrinkage cracks. So finishing a basement. So again, this is the Delta MS. So the same thing they used on the wrap, they've used on the floor. Okay. And again, why is this so good? You put the dimples facing down. If, let's say, there's a minor crack and a little bit of water seepage come down here, if this basement is poured correctly, it slopes to the main floor drain, which means any water, I'm not talking flood water, guys. I'm not talking where the water is going to come up a foot up. I'm just talking a minor leak, just like I had. It would trickle underneath the plastic Delta MS all the way to the floor drain. This stuff, if you're finishing a basement, is really excellent. And I mean, when I did my basement a long time ago, this wasn't out. But if I did it again, I'd do exactly what they're doing here. I'd go with the Delta on the floor, okay? And then you go with subfloor, and then you can go hardwood, whatever you want after the fact. But fantastic product, okay? Just tap con it down, and you're good to go. Excellent stuff. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it. As I said before, there's 7 days a week. I know you've probably got your own inspectors, but if he's never available, give us a shot. If you get me, if you get Mladen, if you get Ian, besides them not talking with my great accent, okay, we all inspect the same. We explain mold in the attic the same. We explain everything the same, okay? You won't hear an explanation from one person different to what I'm going to say and vice versa. So you can, with confidence, it doesn't matter which one you get, we're going to do the same procedures for you. And if you get chance, go see our reviews. We're almost at 2,000. And it's an outside company that we use, okay? And I appreciate your time. I don't know if there's any questions there, Matthew.
Yeah, thanks, sir. That's perfect. Actually got one sent to me, and this is actually pretty similar to some of the other questions you've fielded from the last ones about red flags. So, obviously a lot of the stuff that we're going into, we're having to waive our inspection clauses for some of these properties to stand a chance. So when we do our own showings, what are some of the glaring, red flags for water damage, for moisture damage, in the basement that they should really watch out for, so their clients will know, if they're facing a potential, $10,000, $15,000 repair job, upon moving in?
Yeah, look at the furniture, look at the perimeters, okay? And again, it depends on the flooring they've got is going to show different signs. But, if it's laminate, again, it's very unforgiving. You're going to see little, instead of it being flat, it's going to go like up, like it does, like it just goes goes up like that, right? If there's carpet, look at anything that like bookcases and things like that, because they suck up the moisture. With the weight on the carpet, it will suck up the moisture, and then you'll see staining. But really, and your nose. I mean, if something smells damp downstairs, then it's damp. I mean, unfortunately, you may not find it, but if it smells moldy and damp, there's got to be something down there somewhere, right? So that's the best thing. You just got to be very careful and carry a really good flashlight with you. Spend the money on a good flashlight if that's what you want to do, and walk around. The other option is, for $250, you get us in there for 1 hour, and we'll do what's called a walkthrough inspection. We'll do the roof, we'll do the exterior. We do usually do 30 minutes on the exterior, and then we need 1 hour in the house. We will hit all the highlights for you: the attic, some of the plumbing, the electrical panel, the perimeter of the basement. And there's no report, there's no liability, but we'll hit all the major stuff for you: the Kitech plumbing, any of that big ticket stuff. And we probably do anywhere from 6 to 10 walkthrough inspections a week right now. And sometimes people are paying for it 3 times, but again, at 3 times, if they missed out on the first 2 homes and the third one they get, at the end of the day, it's $750, even if you did it 3 times. But at least they're going in without blinkers on, at least, right?
Perfect. Okay, so that was actually the only one that I had come in. So thank you very much, Gary. That was excellent. Just a reminder for everyone, on the 22nd will be the episode on the grow houses. And then Gary will be doing a special Kitech plumbing presentation for us on October 6th. I'm going to work with head office to make sure they fix the email so you guys know which ones are coming up. And again, any questions that you want relayed, feel free to get a hold of Gary. And Gary, thank you so much. Excellent as always. I'm going to stop the recording here.